All right. Wow. That was probably one of the worst things I've ever seen in sports history. I'm not going to go too deep on it because I think that Stephen A. Smith said it well, even though, sometimes people may view Stephen A. Smith as a bit of an animated character. But, I mean, that was one of the best fights I've ever seen. I felt like both people came in really intense, Pacquiao and Horn. Horn definitely dominated the first round to the point where I was like, oh man, I don't know if it wasn't necessarily that I was like, oh man, I don't know if Horn's gonna win this. I just was like, I don't know if Pacquiao has what he used to have. But I mean, from then on out, I felt like the way that Pacquiao slipped out and landed a lot of left hands, I mean, to Jeff Horn's face, it was insane. And not only that, I mean, Pacquiao, I forget what round it is. It was either 4, 5, or 6. Pacquiao took Jeff Horn's best punch, I mean, on the mouth. I mean, it was like a straight right hand to the face. And Pacquiao battled through it. And not to mention there was multiple headbutts. And besides, like, maybe the last round, and the only reason why you would score big on the last round for Jeff Horn is, I mean, I'll give it to the guy. He battled through. I mean, I don't think they should have. There was no indication that they should have stopped the fight in the 9th round. In my opinion, but I was actually surprised that he made it to the final round. And so he dominated that final round, but I mean, he didn't dominate it in a way that you were like, it swayed the fight. I think anyone who watched that fight, it was very clear that Manny Pacquiao won the fight. And I'm not going to get too much into it because, it gets all conspiratorial and, people are talking about, maybe they just set that fight up for a rematch, whatever. But I'll say this, the bar I was in, I was in a dive bar and there was these 2 Australian guys. And, like I was talking to them and I was expecting like maybe some feedback from them that was counter to what I saw, because I'm like, well, these are, 2 people from the country of Australia, so of course they're going to defend their fighter. But they were like, wow, these were their exact words. They were like, that was almost WWE level like mockery. Like it was so obvious that Pacquiao won this fight. I was so upset that I had to come home and actually like talk about it. And so I think what's really upsetting about the fight itself is just how good of a fight it was. But then to see, it end in that fashion. I mean, anyone who watched that fight, Pacquiao clearly won that fight. And so a little bit disappointed, not just, about boxing itself, but just sports in general. You just see a lot of this stuff now where, I mean, things are just, I mean, it's hard to be a sports fan when you see a night like this and go like, oh yeah, there's integrity in the sport. Because tonight definitely saw a situation where there wasn't integrity in the sport. Anyone who watched that fight, and I'm not even going to pull up the stats, you can pull them up, landed punches. Anybody who watched that fight saw Manny Pacquiao throw some great left hands, cut Jeff Horn a bunch of times. And the only reason Pacquiao was bleeding is because, I mean, really the only great shot that Jeff Horn landed was, again, I don't remember if it was 4, 5, or 6, but somewhere in there he landed like a straight right punch, got Pacquiao good. But beyond that, I mean, there was like one shot maybe in the 7th or 8th round where he caught Pacquiao like right where he headbutted Pacquiao in the back of the head. And I'm like, oh, well, of course he landed that punch. I mean, it clearly showed some heart. To get headbutted 2 or 3 times, depending on how you look at it. I'm just disappointed. I think that was a terrible fight, and it doesn't make me excited about boxing. So if there's anything I could say tonight, I would say thank you, boxing, for letting us all down. And yeah, it was very upsetting. So that's all I got to say. Check me out next time. And yeah. I'm going to go have a couple hours here, last call, 2 a.m. It's 11:25, but those are my thoughts. I had to come home and say that. It's an embarrassment.
Oh, this you crazy mother.